All right, I think everyone should have a stretch and a deep breath. This is the more challenging time of the afternoon to stay focused, but I know that our dynamic duo of Mike and Vincent will completely capture our attention and will be entirely focused on everything they have to say. They're presenting now on uncovering bias in animal management, promoting fairness and equity.
You need to get the clicker again?
Sure. Now there are videos.
That's okay. No. I think you'd be better served. Yeah, doing that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is uncovering bias and in animal welfare management and promoting fairness and equity. We talked a little bit about that earlier, the difference between equality and equity. The two of us being from the United States, we had the word equality hammered into our being as growing up. But the reality is there is another level to that, which is equity. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, have some uncomfortable conversation, and really try to dig into some of the underlying ways to look at the bias that all of us share.
That's correct. And I'm a white man, I have biases. Just want to make that publicly known. In case you didn't know by looking at me. So we have some videos in here. And I don't understand some of these slides. They kind of just pop in. So as you look at these, you have preferences based on the culture you live in, how you were brought up, what you saw before you came in the room even can affect this. Sorting shapes. Our friends, our families, high school. Maybe that was your high school. I saw you. I know it. So all of these things affect our biases. And our biases are deep within ourselves. A lot of these we don't know we have. We won't recognize them, but the good thing about biases is somebody will recognize them. Right. The issue we have to deal with here is, will you tell somebody? Because I think it's actually rude if you don't. If I show a bias, I would ask somebody to bring it to my attention because I can't fix it if I don't know something's wrong. So please, if you leave here today with nothing else, in a polite way, please let someone know their biases.
And I'll add to that. So many times we experience bias as a got you, like we're just waiting for somebody to do something that we can just hammer them about. And the reality is that, this should be, not like I grew up in a different world than the world that we live in today. And so I definitely have my biases. And it's an opportunity for all of us to learn because we are sitting in this room, different experiences, different backgrounds, no matter what our race is, what our background is, we're going to have biases against people of our same race, different race, everybody looking at me as African American. There's bias, whether it's somebody from Africa that says, you're not African American, did you come from Africa? Or a white person that looks at me and says, look at his skin color. That skin color tells me that there's something about him that is not fully human. And so some of those things are things that if people are willing to learn and we have shown as humanity that we are more than willing to be open to learn. And I think one of our goals here is for us to focus, like we talked about in our last presentation, on the good. What can we do to move ourselves forward?
And as we go through here, we do have some videos. I like to talk at an 8th grade level. That's where I understand that. So there are some videos that even I understand. So I think that they'll help y'all through this as well. You know who we are. And if I can get this video to go.
Your brain, by some accounts, receives roughly 11 million pieces of information each second, but your conscious brain is only able to process about 40. How do you handle all the rest? You handle it because you're really using two brains. Your conscious brain, which works with facts and data, has very little capacity and processes information slowly, and your unconscious brain, which is habit and intuition driven, has huge capacity and is really fast. One of your unconscious brain's best tricks is its ability to recognize patterns and use them to assign people and things to categories, allowing your unconscious brain to deal with all of the known, not dangerous issues, and leave only the few unknown or dangerous issues to your conscious brain. This allows us to recognize a pattern and act on it, rather than having to think about every interaction as if we were experiencing it for the first time. We can glance at that four-legged animal and know if it's a wolf or a cocker spaniel. That recognition allows us to make assumptions about the animal facing us, that the wolf belongs to the wild animal category and is likely to be dangerous, or that the cocker spaniel is in the domestic dog category and not likely to be dangerous. The assumptions we make about these pattern groups are likely to be based on our own experiences, on information we have gained from our culture or background, or from the media we listen to or people we admire. Unfortunately, those assumptions are often wrong. When we categorize people, our brains apply two other tools. One is affinity bias, a hardwired preference to respond positively to people who look, sound, and act like ourselves. Brain imaging scans show that when people are shown images of faces that differ from their own, it activates in milliseconds activity in the part of the unconscious brain that alerts us to possible danger. This may reflect a survival tool left over from ancient times when danger often came from those outside our immediate group. Today, however, this means the associations and biases are likely to be unconsciously activated every time when we come across a member of a group, even if we consciously reject group stereotypes. In addition to affinity bias, our unconscious brain categorizes people into groups and then connects those groups to our learned ideas or constructs about what is good or bad. Now, we've decided whether someone is like us or not, and whether they're good or not, all within milliseconds of meeting them. So, what can you do to manage your unconscious biases? You've already started by just learning about unconscious bias. Now, identify your own biases and address one at a time by building inclusive habits. Remember, if you do not intentionally, deliberately, and proactively include, you will unintentionally exclude.
Give credit where credit's due. That's where that come from. And I personally think that for an introduction to bias, that was a nice little short film. And I think it helped me to understand what biases were the first time I saw it. So,
Can I give you an easy shortcut to bias too? My whole family is biased against me because I'm left-handed. Seriously. The ironing board was put a certain way. Everything I had to do growing up, I had to learn to do as a right-hander because the left-handers were different. But I guarantee you to this day, my family doesn't even realize, in a lot of cases, the amount of adjustment, they never thought about it. They never had to deal with it. And that's another, and you think, well, that's not that big of a deal until you realize, I started looking it up. 2,500 people a year die in the United States from things that a right-hander can do that is not accommodated for left-handers. Yeah, 2,500. And we also live 8 years less. We have, yeah.
wow.
Something to think about. And so it's, and see, that's what I'm saying. Nobody even thought about it. So that's an unconscious bias. When I was in school, and I'll just say this one last thing. When I was in school and they had to stop down an activity because Vincent's left-handed, and we got to wait to get the left-handed scissors. We can't find them for Vincent. And everybody's like, oh my God, here he goes again. What did I do? I did nothing except be born a certain way. And so that's another example of bias that you could probably relate to as well.
So while Vincent shared that story with us, was a perfect opportunity for us to look at unconscious versus conscious bias. When these first came up, everybody had an immediate thought about these dogs. And the longer we sat here, we reasoned with ourselves to decide that if we thought they were aggressive to begin with, now maybe we don't, because we had time to think about it. So now we want you to imagine this. Imagine you folks, close your eyes, and y'all flew here. So imagine your airplane, your seats, your flight attendants, the people at the airport, your pilots. Now open your eyes, and I want you to imagine going out to dinner to a nice restaurant and look around the restaurant. Look at your servers, look at your food, look at your place settings. And you don't really have to imagine this because we're here. Okay? Did you imagine those pilots? If you didn't, did you imagine those couples at dinner? And did you imagine those speakers? If you didn't, there's nothing wrong with that. It's unconscious bias is all that is. It's just something you can't control, but you have to be aware that when somebody says pilot or you see a plane in the aircraft, they may not look like me. Grandmother mauled by a dog escaped from a yard north of Brisbane. Some of y'all may know that one. Dog attack leaves 2 seriously hurt. Mom of 3 mauled to death by 2 dogs. Boy 6 needed stitches after dog bark attack. Every one of y'all as we went through that had a vision of what those dogs looked like and the activities that may have happened. I'm not even going to tell you what happened. I want you to think about that. Because you all had that vision of the dog. You all had that vision of what possibly happened. Was the mom not watching her kid? What type of dog it was, what breed, where the type of person that got bit. So that's just something for y'all to think about. Wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and scream out loud because you're angry at yourself for what you thought. But don't be, because it's not your fault. And if there's nothing else we tell you today, I do want you to realize that this is unconscious. This is your environment you've been brought up in.
Yep.
And it's not a negative thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Well, and the thing about it, the unconscious piece of it, our brains normally our brains normally get it right, and because it's a mechanism that helps us understand the world that we are living in, and not that I'm a neurologist or a neuro-linguistic programmist or into neuro-linguistics very much at all. But when you think about things like that the brain uses information like, there's a fire, it's hot, do not touch. Those are very easy attachments that your brain makes to keep you safe. And all of us have, whether it be what we learned growing up or what we experienced as based on whatever it is, we all can make those connections within our lives to give us the easiest path to staying safe. And then sometimes our brains don't get it right and we fall into traps, which are a lot of times when we start to not connect the dots between what our brain is doing to protect us and our consciousness to be able to say, no, I don't need your protection from this. I can make a conscious decision to have a different outcome and have a different experience than what I have been subconsciously programmed based on an experience I have that may not have made me feel very safe. And then also, those traps put us at risk, and we also respond in a trap that puts, how we respond in a trap puts us at risk, which means basically is there is an unconscious piece of our brain, but also we have the power to be conscious and to be present and to practice, what a lot of people would call mindfulness when in our approaches to people. And there's nothing wrong with giving yourself the permission to do that and not to stick to an old way of thinking that you gathered because your brain is automatically wired to keep you safe.
So biases, there are some things we need to discuss. It is an unconscious association, which means your immediate thought is uncontrollable. It does happen all the time. It's unintentional. You didn't mean for it to happen. It's necessary. Your brain finds it necessary to protect you. But it is able to be recognized and checked. What it is not, it's not hateful. It's not spiteful. It's not intentional. It's not uncommon. And it's not equal to racism. We have here tall, short. I'm short compared to Vincent. Okay? I'm tall compared to my grandmother. But these are all things that we immediately think of. But there's no ill intent. Okay, this is something you should do someday. I did this, and this is me. If it works right, it'll be wonderful. If it doesn't work right, it won't be so great. But Google, and let's see, is it going to work? I think so. Rich. And this is what comes up. So even Google has biases, right? Do these people look like all the people in this room? They don't. Is rich associated with money? It is. But can somebody be rich with family, rich with love, rich with friends? But our bias automatically goes to that. This is the tough one here. Sometimes works. There it goes. Okay. Poor. And that's what comes up. Do you think that's a bias? Do you think your council, my councilman, my government, when I talk about a poor neighborhood, do you think that's what they envision? I will go ahead and throw race in this one because I see one white hand in the entire box. So, what are your thoughts on that one, Vincent?
Oh, well, by all means.
You're looking at me. I thought you may have something to say.
So when it's interesting because when we talk about bias and we talk about even bias that starts to cross over and look very intentional, it's inclusiveness. So for instance, when I generally, if I Google an image that I want to put in a presentation, I try to Google somebody of color, somebody that looks like me, because I want to tell my story. sometimes it is so difficult to find a picture of a successful person that looks like me. I mean, in certain circles, now you can find one, but in specific circumstances where I need something specific, I can always find a white person. But I, a lot of times, cannot find somebody that looks like me, or someone I represent that is not necessarily white. And so, I think one of the more so the question is, what is behind that? Because honestly, as you know, being Black, African American, I don't know. I can't tell anybody what you talk about at your dinner table or what's happening in people's homes. I have no idea. But there's something behind that that is bigger than just, as we talked about, unconscious bias. And we as a group of people, and what I'm so happy about in this day and age that I've lived to this day and age, is that I have so much of a different, honest conversation with white people than I ever have had in my career or in my life. And I think there's a way to change that tide, and I feel like it's changing a lot. It's not there yet, especially across the world, and even in the United States. But I feel like with open conversation and open dialogue like we're having today, that we have the opportunity to leave this world better for the next generation of people. And it's up to us to do that.
Note, I blamed Google, but I can't really blame Google because these are the most commonly used images when somebody searches for poor.
Yep.
So these are worldwide. These are people doing this search, and these are the images they most commonly use.
Yep.
I just like the quote, "A ship in a harbor is safe, but that's not what a ship is built for." We could all stay within our own comfort zone and not have this conversation that me and Vincent have and have had.
Yep.
But that's not what we're built for. As humans, we are built to learn, to evolve, and to continue to do better as humankind. Cynicism is a belief that people are generally selfish and dishonest. Do we have cynicism in animal welfare?
We do.
Yes, we do. We honestly believe that everybody that comes in with ill intention, right? They want to bring us that dog they quote unquote found at the market. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They want to argue with us. So we're cynical of people. But it manifests in frustration, disillusionment, and distrust. Are those good qualities? Are those what we want to act like to humankind? They're not. A cynic always expects the worst of people. I have staff members that I have to sit at my desk and I have to say, "You can't say that. You know you can't say that. Go outside, visit the imaginary worry tree and hang that up out there and then come back inside." And then we watch the video of them doing it. It's all good fun. But it attacks idealism, truth, and justice, which for us in the enforcement side and the animal officers, and if you're a sworn officer, I don't know if we have any sworn officers here in the United States. We have both law enforcement who act as law enforcement and animal control or animal management, that you take an oath to uphold that. So here's some examples. We don't only get cynical about our community. She just found this 15-year-old dog with multiple tumors last night. Any of y'all ever had that person walk in your doors? Smelled like shampoo. but they just found this dog with, wow, he sure seems to know you for just finding him in the road an hour ago. Come on, I know some of you said that. I know you have. You've interrogated that person and said, boy.
Even though, Mike, you know how easily a dog can bond to like I've seen dogs bond very quickly. Like, in fact, I found a dog, and by the end of the day, when I found his owner, the dog was following me and not the owner. So yeah.
And that's why dogs are such great emotional support animals, because they're not trained to love me. They just love everybody. Okay, so it's a good point, Vincent. Right. You've called every vet in town and no one has any appointments available. Not even the walk-in emergency clinic. How odd. Y'all ever have that issue? Yeah, we don't have a vet shortage. So, but we've said it. Oh, you just got this skinny in 2 days. Please tell me more. Any of y'all ever talked to somebody about their skinny dogs? Any of y'all called them the dog skinny just because yours at home is fat? Okay. I mean, I look at some of the pictures up here across Australia earlier, and I see dogs that my staff would think were too skinny. But I see happy dogs in happy homes, living a perfect life outside, enjoying this land as God has made it to be enjoyed. But because our dog is 20 pounds overweight, we think every dog should be 20 pounds overweight. So we tell people that when they bring them in, right? And hey, I'm just going out to get that bite that's probably not even a bite. The lady was so over the top, it's probably a freckle on her arm or something. That's being cynical. That's not caring about the person or the animal in front of you. And that's devastating to your organization.
Well, and I would just keep in mind that there's always a story that when, and I believe it was Dr. Karsten that said it yesterday, when we think we know something, we stop listening. And the question is asking the right questions and getting, not only for the person's benefit, but for our own, so that we continue to understand people. There's a concept called seek to understand, then second to be understood. But when we judge or we have that bias against someone, we want them to understand our point of view. And the question is whether or not we really intend to make a connection with that person, or if we just want to judge them and throw them to the curb and win whatever, I think, internal argument we're having about the world and our worldview. And we use that person as a confirmation of our worldview.
And let's remember that cynicism is a trauma coping mechanism. Having faced strong disappointments in life, we learn to disappoint ourselves now to avoid the pain of disappointments later. We buy a sense of safety through a sense of control, but at a high price, the possibility of wonder. Cynics fear what leads to hope, what we believe we don't deserve, which is kindness. And everybody deserves kindness.
Yeah.
So we ask the question, why do you work in animal sheltering? That's one to ponder on. Is it because you love animals, hate people? Okay. How many of you said that? Yeah. How many of you said we love animals more than we love people? Everybody I have interviewed in the last 14 years have said that. Okay. So why do you work in animal sheltering? Save lives? Has it changed? Has your perception of why you work animal sheltering changed since you started 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? It has for me. I've found a whole new reason, and that's helping people. And that's where we recognize biases and we address those biases.
And we choose our bias too. Because how many people in here would hire somebody that says, I adore people, but I hate animals? Even though people are I know in my career, I've dealt with more people than I have animals, especially on a day-to-day basis. And they are the key to getting animals out of the shelter. If you hate them, you are going to become a hoarder with all of your animals in this warehouse. I know you didn't expect to come to a conference and be told that you work in a warehouse. You thought you worked in a shelter, but the reality is we're warehousing animals. And a lot of it has to do with our attitude and our cynicism for the species we come from. And that's whether it's by race or by economics or just we don't like the way somebody looked or talked to us. And so those are some of the things that as we start to examine and understand our bias, not only is it the best thing to do for society as a whole, we are actually contributing to the euthanasia of animals, thousands, millions of them worldwide, because we are cynical of people. And I'll say this last thing. We love animals so much that we're willing to sacrifice them on the cross of our bias because that person does not deserve to be. So that animal is better off dead. Let's just call it what it is. A lot of us think that an animal is better off dead than actually going into a home with a person that we believe shouldn't have an animal.
George Carlin said it, inside every cynical person there's a disappointed idealist. How many idealists do we have in this world? And just in this room. I'm an idealist. I still think that everybody's good, that all animals will be adopted, and that one day we'll find a cure for all cancer. And I'm going to live to 108. Well, in one day, because I lost a day getting over here, so I asked God, He's going to give it back to me. So the problem is we equate bias as a negative. In many ways, bias is necessary. It protects us, it guides us, and it makes us more efficient. But when we think of it as bad, then we wrap it in shame or wrongness. And we lose the ability to recognize it for what it is and work through it or past it. So we have to accept bias because it's there. We can't shame it, because as soon as you shame something, people think we have to get rid of it, and there's nothing we can do about it. You're just a bad person, and you should feel ashamed. So there are a lot of biases. There are, and we're gonna scroll through some of these. We're gonna go through them pretty quick because we didn't get our 15 minutes back. We left y'all earlier. So we're running. But there's affinity bias, appearance bias. Folks who look like us, that's appearance bias, right? Everybody that we saw earlier flying a plane probably looked like us. So that's appearance. Confirmation bias, anchor bias, halo, horn, conformity, status quo, authority, and recency. And we'll go through some of these. And so you want to talk about the circle of trust?
Yeah, circle of trust. I was daydreaming on confirmation bias because it's so pervasive. But the reality is, when we have an experience with a person or a situation, we decide where they're going to be. And the circle of trust is almost like we have decided that experience is the truth when all it was an experience. And the reality is that the everyone else part of that is everything that's outside of our experience. So we start to close off and not be able to see people. So I had a friend that looked like Mike that did me wrong. And now everybody that I see that looks like Mike, that have no idea Mike even exists, I say now, okay, he looks like Mike, he must be not trustworthy. And then vice versa. If I had a great experience with Mike, and I see, man, you remind me of a friend of mine, you look just like him. And that's all a choice. That inside the box or outside the box has to do with the choices that we're making as to what our experiences are telling us.
So this is a typical circle in animal welfare. You've got the trusted few, which are hopefully your family and friends, but also if you're a director, it's usually your managers and that sort. And then you've got the team that goes out a little further, and then you've got the organization. And then outside of that is everybody else. So we have a habit of, and I'm generalizing here, but we being the proverbial me, if my trusted few come to me and they tell me something, I'm going to believe them over my team. I'm going to believe my team over the organization without even talking to my team or without even talking to the organization. I'm going to believe from inside out because that's what I've been taught to do. Affinity bias, similar bias, refers to the tendency to favor people who share similar interest. If I was a rock climber, and I have a group of rock climbing buddies, I'm going to trust them before I trust my crocheting people that I don't know how to crochet, right? That's all that simple. So we look at this gentleman here, and we're all thinking something about this. I'm thinking I don't want him to date my 2 daughters, is what I'm thinking, okay? And then I say, damn it, I missed out on something, okay? So you see the difference there? The initial thought and reality. Because we all had an initial thought. And it could have been, I really love that man's tats, is what it could have been. I really wish I knew where he got that skull tat on his right arm. And then the next one, well, it looks like Doogie Howser. So he's not tatted. You wouldn't think anything about it, right? But we all have those immediate thoughts. Appearance bias, we went through that. It's where a person is discriminated against based on the physical attributes of him or her. I think that's the one we're most familiar with. It can be body weight, height, color of skin, facial marks. That's the one that we are talked about much more than any other biases, is that it's based on skin color mostly. But the same thing happens at a gym. Slightly overweight person goes to a gym, and everybody there thinks they just sit down and eat cupcakes all day. Don't get into the fact they could have thyroid issues or medical conditions that cause them to be the way they are, or even think, why is there a problem with the way they are? So there you go. You want that confirmation bias. It's yours.
Well, I mean, I think confirmation bias is just based, if you've already decided, if you've taken your experiences and you've made them into a belief, and you look for the supporting of that belief in anything you do, or if you have a certain opinion about certain people, anything they do is going to, we'll take the gym, because I go to the gym a lot, and I had the biggest bias against people that were there every day and really muscular, because I thought anything they did was a slight against me. Oh, they think they're better than me. Oh, they're asking me for the machine because they don't think my workout is as important as their workout. And I had to really learn to talk to myself and go, none of that's true. You made all of that up. But because I was looking for it, and because I had my own insecurities when I first started going back to the gym, my confirmation bias had me have an internal dialogue and then be in danger of interacting with people as if we had actually had a conversation, when the only person that was having a conversation was me with myself.
And we see this one a lot as well in politics. not to bring politics in, always told don't talk politics with family and friends, but we tend to watch the news stations that follow our beliefs because it supports what we believe, one side or the other. That's big, right? So we take what we want and then we go tell people about it. Well, you know, this happened, this, and this. Well, you didn't get the other side from the other news. So, anchor bias, it occurs when we're overly rely on the first piece of information. And your public is good at this. That's why I tell you, if you do something wrong, be the first one to put it out. You tell your story or somebody else will. Because that first piece of information out there is going to get all the traction. And everybody believes that. So, if the first piece of information you saw on eBay was a $5,000 rare Beanie Baby, and you had 4 of them in your closet, you're going to believe that all those are worth $5,000. So you have $20,000 sitting in your closet. You might want to get out there and sell one of them. The halo horn effect, that's a term. It's an old term. A psychologist, Edwin Thorndike, in the 1920s, occurs when develop an overall positive impression of somebody because of their qualities or traits. That is, you could think of somebody, you have a lot of yacht clubs around here, I noticed, which is odd to me, living landlocked Arkansas, but there's a lot of yachts. So you could see somebody getting on one of those yachts and that looks like you, because we always like people to look like us, and you could meet them. And they've got that chiseled chin, you know, perfect haircut that doesn't blow in the wind type thing. And you could think positive about them. And all you've done was say, "Hi, my name is Mike Wheeler." You don't know that their money comes from Colombia on the drug trade, okay? Or, you know, selling sex slaves somewhere. But because of that, there's where you feel. And then the horn effect, and I look at this as, you know, you got the halo, which is the angel, and the horns from the devil. That's where it comes from. Is because of a negative impression you have of somebody based on a trait or experience. The doctor with the tattoos. If you were a highly religious person who translates the Bible as saying that you shall not mark your body, then you have a very negative opinion of that gentleman just based on tattoos. You want to hit that one?
Oh, yeah, I can hit that one. But you know, one thing on that halo effect, I remember I was in an Uber car one time, driving to the airport. Well, the guy was driving, and the driver was driving. He's weaving through, and he's playing loud music. And I was like, you know what? I'm giving him the worst rating ever. When he dropped me off at the airport, he got out of the car, and he gave me a big hug. I love hugs. I was like, this dude is getting a 5. I don't care if he almost killed me or not. But that, I think that's a halo effect. Anyway, so yeah, conformity bias, which basically means groupthink, and then also wanting to fit in. That's one of our, it feels like, at least for me, especially me, who was born a people pleaser, wanting people to feel comfortable, and also not only being a people pleaser, but also wanting for people to feel like they are validated as well. And so that can really get us into trouble, especially when that group is either not really in alignment with what you really truly believe, or also puts you in a situation where it looks like they are representing things and that are not actually representative of you.
So we're about out of time. So we're not going to get through all these slides, and I apologize, but I do want the next slide here. It's a video. If I can get it to play. Nope, go back. How do I go back?
No grades at stake, gentlemen. Just take a stroll. There it is. control. Doing poetry is cold. Left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, left. Halt! Thank you, gentlemen. If you notice, everyone started off with their own stride, their own pace. Mr. Pitts, taking his time. He knew he'll get there one day. Mr. Cameron, you can see him thinking, is this right? It might be right, it might be right. I know that. Maybe not, I don't know. Mr. Overstreet, driven by a deeper force. Yes. We know that, all right. And I didn't bring them up here to ridicule them. I brought them up here to illustrate the point of conformity, the difficulty in maintaining your own beliefs in the face of others. Now, those of you, I see the look in your eyes like,
I would have walked differently. Well, ask yourselves why you are clapping.
and we all have a great need for acceptance. But you must trust that your beliefs are unique, your own, even though others may think them odd or unpopular, even though the herd may go, that's bad. Robert Frost said, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. I want you to find your own walk right now, your own way of striding, pacing, any direction, anything you want, whether it's proud, whether it's silly, anything. Gentlemen, the courtyard is yours. You don't have to perform, just make it for yourself. Mr. Dalton, you'll be joining us.
Exercising the right not to walk.
So we'll leave it there, but I think that was a perfect indication of conformity. We want to be accepted, therefore we just fall in line. I've heard a lot of different viewpoints throughout this conference on lots of things, cats, on lots of things. I say just don't conform. Do what's right and do what's best for the animals and yourself. And realize that you can't control the biases. Accept them, try to work through them, and apologize when necessary.